Okay, here we go. Day 45. We are in motion. Yes, let's go. Who do I see? Yes, there we go. Good morning. Yes. Thank you, Midwest Magic. Thank you to all. All right, we are going to try something different, folks. Again, it is day 45. I'll let everybody kind of file in. Audio should be fine. What you see, yes, there it is. The home of Nancy Guthrie. We remain here on the ground. I want to just test our audio. We're going to have some guests during the course of our coverage today, and we'll see how long we're going to go. I'm not in a rush. Let me check our audio. There are some developments with the case. Audio sounds great. Audio sounds terrific. We there's definitely some updates, and I want to let me just okay. I want to just also I'm just double checking all the sound and so forth, so then we're going to be good to go. Okay, there's that. Um, Let me just check our Facebook feed. We should be good. Yes, good afternoon, or it's good morning here, but where everybody else is. Remember, so Tucson, when I arrived here, was 2 hours behind the East. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Now it is. There's Lynn Miller. Just here to say hello. Now it is um let's see. Um okay. Just double checking. I think the audio is good, but I do want to kind of bring you up to speed, and then we're going to talk to some different guests today about the case. But what I find interesting, and again, let me just I'm pretty sure it's yeah. Okay. The audio is on Facebook is fine. The audio on YouTube is fine, and the audio on X is fine. Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon from all right, Atlanta, and it's St. Patrick's Day. But folks, here is day 45, and we're gonna in just a moment be speaking with someone. There's all different platforms, but one of the platforms that I'm on and I'm covering the case with is on X. Now we're also on Facebook, YouTube. If you go to the website, depetro.com, you can see links to all of our platforms. But we've been doing TikTok in the afternoon, and we try to use as many platforms as possible. Then coming up in 2 hours, we're even going to be live on the radio. So, but someone we're going to talk to in just a moment, and she is all over the case. It's True Crime Belieber, and we're going to talk to her. She's going to make her debut with us. But I do want to, before we talk to her and try to make this interactive, we have another guest we're going to talk to later, Douglas McGregor. He is also on the platform X, and he's a geo profiler, very, very knowledgeable. He does geography, behavior intelligence. But something that I've noticed before we bring on our first guest, and again, folks, if you're on Facebook, you can share. If you're on YouTube, um, let's see. I'm just going through. What I've noticed is I fully understand that with the national media, and they've all pulled out of here, and they all have to make the decisions. And what I'm talking about, and I've talked about this quite a bit, but News Nation was here, and Fox obviously was here. I mean, at one point, everyone was here, and then it gets not lost on me of what's going on in the world with Iran and so forth. But something that I've noticed is there's two people that that I think they're doing really good work on the case. One, I've been on her show a bunch of times, is Nancy Grace. And the other person who I've also actually been on Fox with her back when she was on Fox is Megyn Kelly. And Megan, they're both 100% on the Nancy Guthrie case. So just to show you and pan around, it is day 45. Now there are some, you know, Tucson is still out here. Mark the Shark was here yesterday. Those two, the Flowers is still here. But and I'm sure they'll be by later on. But as we start our broadcast on this day 45, it doesn't mean I'm going to be the only one out here today. But at the moment, I'm the only one out here. I always check to see. I don't see any cars or anything that I can see in the driveway. That is her garage. Megan Kelly, her podcast that she did on this, her a segment she did on it, it was actually pretty interesting. She had someone on that believes that the FBI has no source, has no suspects with the case. And in the comments, you can put where you're watching from, what day you've been watching since, and then we'll get into some of the different theories on the case. But something else that Megan Kelly's guest that he broke was the fact that um, she broke the fact that the entire family, uh, the Guthrie family, that they took lie detector tests. And so, I mean, that's the first time we've heard anything like that. So that's one of the guests that she had on. And so saying that's the first time I've heard that the family actually took lie detector tests. Then there's also news that the FBI agents are zeroing in on two key dates, days before she was abducted. And we'll touch on that as well. I know Brian Enton was getting into that. But I want to go to our first guest. And again, she is on X and she's been doing a great job with the case. And I believe this is the first time, but certainly having her on. And it is, and tell me if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's True Believer.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, no rush, but I've been following a lot of your work on X, and before we begin, I want to give you a chance. Any other platforms, or where can people follow your work?
I honestly normally just post on X. I post
On
on
X.
Facebook sometimes, but
Okay.
I do have a TikTok, but I haven't posted on it yet. This is my
Okay.
first time ever speaking
Okay.
about it. Like,
And I don't think the last, but why don't we just
yeah.
start off? If you caught, and you're right up to speed the way I am, obviously, and others, and that's what we're going to be looking for is sprinkling in our coverage with people. I'm going to call you. You're in the 1%, which is when something new happens, you know it's new because you've been following the case. So
Yeah.
let's start off with your thoughts of two, as I mentioned, Nancy Grace and Megyn Kelly. They're not taking their foot off the pedal in any way. They're staying full coverage on it. But what about Megyn Kelly's guest, True Believer, saying that it's his information that lie detector tests, the family was given lie detector tests. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's actually something I was going to bring up to you. So I'm glad that you brought it up because it doesn't make sense to me whenever Sheriff Nanos cleared them, why he didn't add that in.
Okay, that's a
I
good
find
point.
I find that pretty odd, especially because there's still so much speculation if they're involved or not. Why not just say it? Like, why is it some random source giving it out and not the sheriff's department?
That is an excellent point, True Crime Believer. And especially if you look at the timeline, on one day he said no one's been cleared. And then the next day he comes out and says the family's been cleared.
Yeah.
So do you take that as that does seem like it was maybe a knee jerk reaction that Sheriff Nanos was getting maybe pressure from the family?
Yeah, that's my impression. And then also, I don't know, did you see the interview with it was JLR and 857. They talked to the retired SWAT commander from Pima County.
I
And
did not.
he said that from knowing Nanos probably did it out of emotion, which we
Okay.
can tell by his interviews. that
Yep.
he does come off as an emotional person, and he
Yes.
probably felt bad for the family, and that's why he cleared
Okay.
them, is what the son
Okay.
said.
What do you make of the fact, that you raise a good point though. He could have said, he did not disclose the why we're clearing them, but if they and I want to back up for a moment because I think this is lost. There's a lot of people saying, "How can anyone point the finger at the family?" And Megan Kelly was saying that Savannah is really livid at anyone who was pointing the finger at her sister and her brother-in-law. But if you go back to that first Saturday night, so it happened on the Sunday, and then the week goes on. That Saturday night, they were at Annie and Tommaso's house. They towed the car. They were taking pictures inside in the darkness. I think that's kind of lost that the media, the media follows where the police were. And at that time, the police were all over their house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So it makes it really confusing. And I understand being livid, but I think she also has to understand like this is what happens in true crime.
Yes.
Like in
Yep.
any case, that's always going to be the assumption is the last person who was seen with her. And then
That's
to add on top of the fact that they towed the car, they had it for 41 days. I mean, they had it so much longer than they had Luke's car,
that's
which
right.
that blows my mind. I'm still so confused about that. And why their car is listed in evidence is still just, I don't know. It's weird. It's suspicious to me.
You know what else is the fact that, you know, like Luke's car, he had said, go ahead, check through it. It's a new car. I just got this, I think on Monday or Sunday, which I find odd. And then you're really confident riding along and the police pull you over and you say, is this about the Nancy Guthrie case? And
Yeah.
then he says, oh, I wasn't really following the case, but like you say that, and then you very confidently say, yeah, you can search the car. I just picked this up on Monday, which to me tells, you're not worried about anything because it's a brand new car, wouldn't have anything. But let's go back to Annie's car for a moment. Good morning, Bob and Jody. Yes. Um, what I find odd is that they tore that car apart. And so, what would happen that it's almost as if they took their car apart more than they took Luke Daly's car apart.
Yeah, I actually said something about that on X the other day because someone said, like it could take a long time if it had to be repaired and they didn't have parts. But you would think a Range Rover, if it was torn apart, would take a lot longer to repair because it's like a luxury vehicle compared to a
Yes.
Honda CRV.
Yep. And that night, I was right there at Culver Restaurant. Obviously, we started with the SWAT raid, and then I made my way to Culver. And the way they were going through that Range Rover, I thought, okay, this is it. The way the FBI was on scene, the way their attention to detail, the way they were just processing the Range Rover right there in the parking lot of Culver's, I thought, wow, they have who it is. And then
Mhm.
cut it loose to him. But what I haven't understood about the way they took apart Annie's car is in many ways, Annie and Tommaso, and again, I'm not pointing a finger at them, but if they said, we found Nancy's blood in your vehicle, it would be very easy to say, well, yeah, I took her to the doctor 2 weeks ago and she cut her finger and was bleeding. Or if they said, to Tommaso, just as an example, we found your DNA in the house. He could say, "Yeah, of course you did. I walked her in that night." So I'm a little thrown at exactly what they may have been looking for the way they tore apart their vehicle.
Yeah, so one of my followers actually mentioned that it could be possible that maybe they were looking for the DNA that they found in the house.
Okay, and to see if that was also in that vehicle
Yeah. And
as a
I
match.
actually I thought that was a pretty
That's
interesting
really good.
theory.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what else, true crime believer, is what do you make of, and it's Jennifer Coffindeffer, and we're going to have her on at some point this week, but former FBI, and she's saying and now putting out that she believes she's of Mexican descent, and she has noticed that billboards are going up in certain areas. Obviously, Arizona has a heavy Mexican population, but also parts of California, LA, but Houston, Texas. She's under the belief that she thinks, although they can't identify a person, the DNA they found in the house, they can identify that someone's ethnic background, meaning if the person who abducted Nancy was Asian, that, that's something that we don't deal with all the time, but it would be, in other words, through DNA, you can tell, is someone
Mhm.
Asian? Are they African American? Are they Mexican? Um, what do that's a real interesting point. They were looking to see if there was a DNA match from the house. But what do you think of that theory that they're putting up billboards potentially in high Mexican populations? And Jen Coffindaffer believes that she thinks that they may have the ethnic makeup of the suspect who abducted Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing that for over a month that the DNA is allegedly there's some kind of marker in it. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that signifies that it's someone Hispanic or Latino. And then we also have the billboards there in Texas too, which obviously has a high population of Hispanic Latinos. So,
Yes.
so yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then something, I think it was Nancy Grace the other night pointed out how his eyebrows are very taken care of. Like it looks like he gets them waxed, which is
Yes.
something a lot of Hispanic and Latino men do. They're very, like pretty boy.
No, that and Jen Coffindaffer mentioned that. I think you're right about Nancy Grace. True crime believer. Number one, you're so knowledgeable and you're natural. I am thrilled and honored. This is the first time you're appearing. And I'm
Thank
giving
you.
you the split screen of just you in the house. I'm on here all the time. People know what I look like. We'll do the two of us on a split screen. But I want to hear just some of your other thoughts on the case, such as has your theory kind of evolved? Um, with me, the fact that the sheriff on Friday, that interview with the Today Show, I thought that was, that's the first time Sheriff Danos has said that we believe we know motive why he did what he did, and it's also kind of the theory we've had from day one. Let's just start with that. What do you make of that?
Um, when I saw that interview, I'm not gonna lie, I got really excited.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, okay, they are on to someone,
Yep.
and like this is gonna happen soon. Like a break is coming.
That's what I thought.
Um, yeah, but then it's like, more and more time goes on, and I'm like, I start losing hope. But I try to hold on to hope too. So I am feeling like the little leaks that have been coming out. Um, I think that they have someone and they're surveilling them.
Wow, that would be I agree with you. I was very encouraged when I saw that on Friday. And I think
Mhm.
people also have to understand that he's doing that interview with Savannah's network. And I
Mhm.
don't think he would be saying that to NBC. He knows that when he's talking to NBC, Liz, who's based out of LA, he's basically talking to Savannah. So I give a little more importance. Maybe I shouldn't, but whenever he talks to NBC, I just think he's conscious of that that's Savannah's network. So he's not going to say something out of school or going to have to correct himself. I picked up on when he said, we believe we know why he did what he did. We believe, we know his motive. Now, when I mentioned that to Brian Enton of News Nation, he said, well, I didn't read that much into it. He could have meant they, just because he was saying the sheriff sometimes talks out of school. But I just think this wasn't live, it was taped. He could have had an opportunity to go back and say, I misspoke. I meant to say they instead of just he. What do you make of that?
Yeah, same thing as you. It
Yeah.
was when he said he, it's like they know who it is.
Wow. Huh.
That's what I got from it.
Do you? At this point on this day 45, do you think, based on everything we've seen, was this a lone wolf or do you think there was more than one person involved? Like, I'm curious to hear your kind of rough sketch of what happened.
I think it's a murder for hire, and I think there was multiple people involved, at least two, if not more.
Wow.
I
And
I don't
go
know
ahead.
what the reasoning would be. Like, I don't know what would be gained from it because,
Yep.
we don't know anything about like her financials or anything like that, or anything she had in her house that was of value. I don't
Right.
know what the motive could be, and I don't have a theory about that at all, to be honest. But
But,
I do think it was a murder for hire.
and someone hired them to come in here and with the purpose of abducting her and taking her life.
That one's hard for me,
Well,
because
that's essentially what happened here.
yeah,
So,
I don't know if like the full intent. I think taking her, that one is weird for me. Like why they
okay.
didn't just, if they did murder her, I hope they didn't, but if they did, I don't understand why they took her.
Yeah, that remains the puzzle as I've talked about. I mean, this very common of break-ins. It's very unusual. And I've talked to both police and criminals who say that you increase the risk of something going wrong. Number one, if you go into the house, you rob it, never mind the homeowner's there, that's a risk. But to take the person, let's go back to that night. She's bleeding. He or they get her into a vehicle, the vehicle, which still remains unknown. What if you get pulled over? What if someone saw the car and you get pulled over? What if you get a flat tire? What if you're in an accident? What if
Mhm.
you are pulled over and you have Nancy Guthrie in the back of the vehicle? You're in an awful lot of trouble. Um, so now, what do you make of how you think they got in? Because I have a theory. When I'm here and we're looking right now at the house,
Mhm.
and I've done videos on this, the left side to me definitely seems to be the vulnerable part to enter. And on that first or second day, there's drone footage, and you see the detectives. It's the left side of the house. There's sliding glass doors. It's also an empty lot to the left. To the right, you have the garage, and then you also have the neighbor next door actually had several cameras. Some people, I mean, I know it's an unknown. People have thought that maybe they got in through the back, but then other people still maintain they think they went right through the front door. Do you have any thought on that?
Um, I don't think they went through the front door. Did you watch Brian Enton's interview he did with the neighbor yesterday?
I'm not sure. I may have seen it, but
So she talked about how Nancy has that security door with the
yes,
bars on it. And she
yes.
said those things are almost impossible to break into. So
Okay,
she thinks that the person with the mask was like the second person to arrive. Someone was
okay.
already in the house and
Yes.
they were waiting for the person inside to open that door.
Okay. Do you have any thought to about the timeline of, what I reached out to the sheriff's office and I asked would they even update the timeline, and they said they're just sticking with the regular timeline. But is there anything about, if we're going off the original timeline, it's something goes off the camera deactivates, her pacemaker stops connecting to the app. Um, any thoughts that you have concerns or questions about the timeline?
Um, I guess I I don't really know if I have any thoughts, but I do wonder like because we don't have timestamps of the masked man.
Right.
We don't even know what date that was on. We've all
Exactly.
assumed that it was that night, but
Yep.
maybe it wasn't. And maybe it wasn't at 2 o'clock in the morning when the um, ring footage disconnected or the Wi-Fi disconnected.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know. It's hard because with such little information, which I totally understand why we're not getting more. They have
Right.
to affect the investigation. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot that they know, and I think eventually we're going to find out.
Mm. What about what else about like right now? There's several people that are really key, but I think Nancy Grace has been really strong on the case. I think Megan Kelly, I like the fact she's paying a lot of attention to it. And of course, Brian Enton. Anything stand out to you um, just of recent, like just in the past couple of days that has popped up that you found interesting?
Well, you posted something about a blue truck,
Yes,
so I
there
find
is.
that interesting.
There's a neighbor that lives. I won't say exactly where, but this is a neighbor lives in this neighborhood. Has good footage and believes that they had video. See, the problem with this area is there's multiple ways you can get in and out of here. When you go around some of these streets, true crime believer, it becomes like a maze. I mean, I've gotten to know my way around a little bit, but it's every street kind of looks the same,
Yeah.
and it's very there's different outlets to how to get out of here, and there's where this neighbor is positioned he has some pretty decent cameras and he had footage of a blue truck in that area in this area, excuse me, the night that Nancy was abducted. And what really stood out to me was the FBI went out and he contacted the FBI and they came out to his house and then they ended up going back almost 10 times looking at the different cameras and checking things. Now the problem for a neighbor like that is that they don't then circle back to him and say, "Oh, we found out that that was such and such." So, but what stuck out in his mind was he seems to be the only one that had footage of this blue truck that was in the area.
Yeah.
So they could be onto that, and that could end up being a vehicle of interest that they were trying to get. I was speaking to a member of law enforcement that said, the challenge then for law enforcement is they want to then try to figure out how did that truck get there, and then what route did it take, and then they want to, be able to determine that. But if you notice, they've been totally silent on any type of vehicle that they're looking for.
hmm And I am curious about that map that Annie sent out.
Yes.
I've been trying to figure out with people who actually live there, like what could be significant about it. I haven't really figured it out yet, though.
Okay. That was early on. I got
Yeah,
to believe if she put it out, you can be sure that law enforcement went to all those businesses to try to pull any type of footage that
yeah,
they have.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
so I what I also don't know is so there's police that I deal with in the Northeast, and they have a full list. Police that I deal with, they have a full list of businesses that have cameras on the businesses. So when something happens, they know exactly, okay, just as an example, if this happened on Main Street, let's go to this hardware store, they have cameras, let's go to this bank, they have cameras. And so like they have it all set up. We don't know if Pima County, if they have that type of setup, but I think she was just kind of putting out that anyone that may have, camera footage around that area, almost to like a be on the lookout, because the map she put out, it's really not close to the house,
Mhm.
but it could have been. I took that as something that the police may have mentioned to her of we're going to be checking this area for
Yeah,
footage.
yeah, I
So
got that question too.
um and what do you something else I think that people should note is as much as they say they're all working together, if you notice, there is still like a back and forth between the FBI won't go on record, right? The FBI won't go on record. The FBI won't. They're not going to contact you. You're in touch with them, true crime believer, and the FBI. They say, listen, I can't go on the record. However, if you say the following, you're not going to be wrong. So the thing is, on Friday, when the sheriff he goes on the segment on the Today Show and says that we believe we know the motive. We think it's the motive from day one. We feel pretty good about it. Why he did what he did. When that afternoon, ABC News, they have the report that the FBI retrieved more images from the house. But notice the FBI doesn't go on the record with them, but
Mm-hmm.
ABC runs with it. So, as someone that has worked in media for a very long time, what you need to know is behind the scenes, the two reporters for ABC, I think it was Aaron Katursky and Pierre Thomas, when they're dealing with their bosses at ABC, they can't just say, "Hey, I spoke to a guy," that at that high level nature
Mm-hmm.
they need to know, and their boss needs to know. And then I noticed Fox was able to confirm it, and Brian Entin was able to confirm it. I'm just saying that is behind the scenes. They're not going with that unless they have it solid from the FBI. And the FBI may not go on the record with it, but that doesn't mean that it's not solid information, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, it's also much like the local reporter in Phoenix. You remember a couple weeks ago, it was a Sunday night, and she came out with the FBI believes that it was a robbery gone wrong. And as much as some people, well, you just never know. But the fact of the matter is, they are the CBS affiliate in Phoenix. And that
Mm-hmm.
reporter works a lot with Phoenix FBI. So my point is, as much as the sheriff then put out a statement saying, I have never said it was a robbery gone wrong. But what people need to know is that CBS affiliate in Phoenix, they're not going to let that reporter go on the air and
Mm-hmm.
say, they think it was a robbery going wrong, unless if you're her boss, you're saying, okay, we won't say it's them, but we got to get your source on the phone speaker, and just tell us that it's clear. And so
Yeah.
it's like there's a lot of that going on in the background. Whenever you see law enforcement, I've noticed that to me it becomes FBI. And the sheriff, he always seems to put out a statement because then the sheriff put out a statement on Friday after the report came out that the FBI had retrieved additional footage, if you noticed that. But I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that. So, well, listen, your coverage of the case is fantastic. I'm very
Thank
intrigued.
you.
You are a rising star.
Thank you.
So tell everyone again so they can follow you on X.
Yep.
I encourage you to get the TikTok channel going.
Yeah. I
Something to
tried
think
the
about.
other night. Maybe I'll try again because
All
this didn't
right.
go
It's
as
not
bad as
easy.
I intended.
You're funny. Um, I don't know what's going to happen today. I agree with you. On Friday, I was like, oh wow, they have a really good sense, and I think they're onto someone. And
Mm-hmm.
then Megan Kelly, her source comes out with saying that they have no suspects. But one last thought on that before I let you go. I wonder if that again, like I always go to who said that. Like somebody is telling them that where they feel confident enough that they're gonna, go with it. Because
Yeah.
Ashley Banfield, she's still sticking to her guns that she had a source that told them that, the brother-in-law, Tommaso was a suspect. I, I went back and looked at that. She did leave herself some room because obviously anyone close to the person and the last person to see them alive would in fact be a suspect. But I just find, we wonder, or I do, is it possible? We heard early on that the FBI felt the sheriff was keeping information from them. So is it possible that that is still going on and Pima County Sheriff, like they're on to someone, FBI is in the dark, and so FBI is almost trying to flush him out a little bit by saying, like putting it out there that he has no suspects. I'll give you the final word on that.
Yeah. So Um, One of the things I noticed in Nano's NBC interview the other night was
Yep,
he said something along the lines of, we have our theories and they have theirs.
that's right. Good
And
point.
that made me think, is he referring to the FBI?
Yeah. Hmm. Very interesting. Folks,
Yeah.
she is true crime believer. Excellent,
Thanks
excellent,
so much
excellent.
for having
A
me on.
plus. Yes. Keep following it, and I will have you back.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the day, folks. Again, she was just terrific. I'm not going to show it, but there's a very nice neighbor who has come by. Again, this is day 45, and people wonder about flowers and dead flowers. And I'm not going to show the individual, but it's a neighbor that has come, and she is cleaning out a lot of the rubbish. And she's got a very nice dog, and she's just very diligent, and she is taking out and removing a lot of dead flowers, and it's going to look so much better. I'll show it when she's done. I don't want to interrupt. I also, folks, we are going to, as I mentioned, we are going to have different guests. This is day 45. I wanted to give true crime believer the the full spotlight because I think she deserved it. And I want to tell you that that was the first time that her and I had actually ever chatted. And I mean, that is like a star is born. She was terrific, wasn't she? Now, X is a really easy platform for me to book guests. I know people do different ways. Some people do phone calls on TikTok. We can do the split screen, but if you're not on X, I'm very open to having guests on of people that really follow the case. What I like, and I can tell, like if you follow it, you can tell whether or not someone is truly following the case. And I know some people, they almost get offended at that, but there are some people they just start to repeat like stuff that we already know. I try to treat this that, as I said, everyone does their own form of coverage, but I try to treat this a little bit like NFL Insider. So when you watch NFL Insider, I mean, I'm a big football fan. They're not like it's not for casual fans. So the coverage that I like to do are people that are really vested and they are um, into the case and know the details of the case. And one of the most important parts to me for people that when you truly follow a case, the importance is you know when there's new information about the case. So um, so we are also gonna boy, she was fantastic. I am just blown away. Again, it is day 45. Wow, she was so good and prepared and professional and good to go. Now I want to check some of the news. Now in the chat, you can put your own theories. I will say I'm gonna. Oh, no, that's not new. I'm checking right now. FBI agents zeroing in two key dates. I mentioned that. I want to just then check any new info that is coming out. Okay, yes, it is St. Patrick's Day. I'm really just looking for new information on the case. So I think that is really, really interesting. Hmm. So I'm very open to having more of people on like that. She's the real deal, and she is okay. I'm just checking. Yeah, we're gonna have Morgan Wright on. He's really good. FBI hasn't. More Megan Kelly. The FBI has no suspects. Now, I think true crime believer that she raises a good point, which is the sheriff saying they have their suspects and we have No, they have their theories and we have our theory. That doesn't sound very promising. I'll tell you that on this day 45. But I want to reiterate, I like the fact of Nancy Grace and Megyn Kelly staying on the case because like I said, so many of the national media are just pivoting into the whole situation with Iran, which I understand. But I want to go to that info. Let me just also check. We're in no rush. We're going to stream. Notice we started a little bit earlier today. I'm going to be live on the radio coming up the top of next hour in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So we are going to, that changes the way we do things just a little bit. But uh, hmm, I did get a message from someone they want to start a search party. Now, the only thing about that is it really becomes like needle in a haystack. It really becomes what are we looking for? I don't think you can just go out. I let me say this: you could go out and just start searching fields, but I don't think it'd be productive if you just start going like in the middle of nowhere. You got to realize, as much as people don't like the sheriff, it's still his investigation. The police have more info than anybody else, and they're the ones that hold the answers. I know people may not like it, but so much of this becomes dependent on how the police are handling the investigation, whether people realize it or not. You just there's nothing you can do because they hold the cards. They know where the clues lead. We only get clues based on. Hold on one moment. Okay. Wow. I think it's great. She's getting rid of a lot of dead flowers. I do want to mention I am going to be more open minded with some of the theories that people have. And I'll tell you why. Simply because right now, I mean, they don't know, right? The sheriff, they don't know what happened. And so, you know, right now, in essence, anybody's ideas, I don't think can be ruled out because of the fact that they don't they still don't have a handle on exactly what happened here. And they haven't shared anything like that. So I don't think, as much as somebody may want to rule some things out, I don't think you can. Good work. Yes. Just so you understand, I encourage people to bring artificial flowers. Yes, they are. Yes. Yes. But wow, that's heavy. You're doing great work. What's your dog's name? Millie. Okay. Great dog. You too. All right. There's Millie and the owner. Yeah, the javelinas keep going after the flowers and it's creating a mess. People need to understand, and I'll show what I'm talking about. Millie the dog. Um, that's a heavy bag. She's doing a great job in lugging it away. I'll just show a quick shot. Now, people need to understand those are dead flowers. And for anyone that is thinking of coming out, and it is nice when people do that, the move is to bring like Allie, that woman Allie that came out. The move is the wise move is to bring artificial flowers. So the javelinas been having a field day and eating all these flowers. So you can see a lot of the flowers that then die, it just turns into a mess. So the neighborhood association, there's Dolly's sign, Pinky signs. And again, the ribbons here outside of Nancy's home. So now there's several things that I want to touch on. We are going to have different guests on. I'm going to have two guests next hour. One is the top of next hour. We are going to talk to a guest simply because I do still maintain a radio show in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So we're going to talk to Vic Meller coming up. And I think we may want to even just test it out. I think, okay, he's there. We could just do a quick test. So there he is. There's the big guy. Vic, I just want to make sure. Are you hearing me good? Can I?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. How am
Okay.
I?
You sound perfect. You sound
All right.
perfect.
Thank you,
So
sir.
let's chat in 15 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. All right, folks. Vic Meller, he's going to join us coming up. Good connection there. We can keep him off stage. So, but I want you to understand. Number one, it's day 45. It's Tuesday, March 17th. I am well aware that that a lot of the media has left. However, I really am glad to hear true crime believers say what I thought, which was when the sheriff said that they felt pretty good about it, that they hold on one moment. I'm gonna hold on one moment. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. We'll do it top of the hour. Okay. I want to go through some of the news, and there is still a lot of updates. Let me check Jen Coffendaffer. Jen's been really good. We are going to have her on. And I'll tell you, Megan Kelly, that panel she had was excellent. Okay. Jennifer Coffendaffer is saying Nancy Guthrie, Nancy's daughter, Annie and her son-in-law have been cleared. Below is utter nonsense. Car's been released. Didn't kill a mom. FBI's following. It's not a soap opera. So I think she's referring to somebody posting something about, let's see, she writes, this is Jennifer Coffendaffer on X, FBI. Nope, it's inverted. Nancy's likely dead. Her children are grieving. Megyn Kelly says Savannah's angry at the accusations. Billboards are in Texas, California, Arizona, places chosen by the FBI. The FBI has moved on in terms of suspects. Maybe the conspiracy theorists should follow the FBI's lead. If Nancy's alive, imagine how angry she'd be over this. This was sent to me. I don't know the origin. This is, I have had people send this to me, and it's someone that tries to connect the dots, so to speak, regarding some of the players involved. And I want to just look at this. Annie, Tommaso, Derek, Kalella, couple, Sam Venues, DJ Mudo, Luke Daly, Kayla Daly. I don't know who that is. Maybe people have seen this. This is see the different individuals. That's Luke Daly to the far left, or I could move it. Yeah. There's Tommaso and Annie at the top. I've seen that guy's name, Derek Halella. I don't know who couple, same venues, couple. Kayla Day, DJ Mudo, Luke Daly. I don't know. Someone is trying to say that they're all connected. I think a big question right now is what do you think those other dates mean? A neighbor says the FBI asked her for video footage on January 11th and January 24th. January 11th was a waning crescent moon. January 24th was a waxing crescent. February 1st was a full moon. Could this explain lighting differences in the background in these photos? Source information says different days. So you do see, I mean, you can't ignore the difference, I don't think, with the lighting there compared to You know, there is a difference. Someone was, I've also seen people mention that when you, the fact when there's no, oh, okay. There we go. We have the comments. Yes. All right. There's Jane Rice. All right. Thank you. I apologize. I have not been mentioning those who have been sending stars or been, there we go. Different days. You know, it's not time stamped. So it is difficult. It is difficult. This Trisha Peliquin. We don't have to have that on, but I like it. What do you guys think? I like how it kind of showing the comments right there. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Yep. It is day 45. This is different. The jacket and the shoes. I don't know. I'll see what Debbie thinks about comments on the screen. It's definitely different. That's for sure. All right. Thank you, Mary Dean. I want to go through some other kind of update news of the day. Again, we are right now, we're live on both Facebook and YouTube. So, and I believe we have our mods for both. If not, the comments move quickly. Watch your comments. This is an open investigation. This is still a huge story. I also want to, oh, good. Thank you. There we go. Oh, okay. Thank you. Let's do this, please. If the video and the picture are not timestamped, ask yourself, how did they know the man in the video was part of the crime, not just a random criminal? That is an excellent point. Let's do this, please. I like that. I like that a lot. Just trying to figure out, can I? No. Okay. Excellent point. Okay. Now, as I said, top of the hour. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk to Doug McGregor, who's an investigator. At the top of the hour, we're going to actually talk to Vic Miller. He is running for Congress in the state of Rhode Island in CD2. So I know it could throw people off, but she was excellent. Really, really good. True crime believer. This could be daily. What my intention, I want many of you to understand, is to, number one, we're staying. And number two, is I want to start to work some people into a little bit of a rotation that we're going to have on a regular basis. So maybe daily, or especially when news breaks. And just to be clear, I fully get, I have people, why are you still there? What's going on? And blah, blah, blah. You know what? I'm still into the story, and I believe you're still into the story. And I've covered a lot of different stories. You learn a lot when you're on the ground. I always like coverage that brings you right on the ground. So again, there are, I know, especially TikTok, there's all these people that are commenting on it and doing video TikToks on it and so forth. But what works for me is always kind of being like right there. So you got to go with what you're comfortable with. But that is kind of the working plan right now. And I really think you're going to like Doug McGregor coming up at one. When I give the time, we as I mentioned, time difference. We are currently 3 hours behind the East Coast. So we're Pacific Coast time. When I arrived here, we were 2 hours behind. So I don't want to keep going round and round on it, but right now we're going to be coming up to 10 a.m. In the East, it's going to be coming up to 1 o'clock, 1 p.m., excuse me. So, but especially, okay, let me send Debbie a message. Now, yesterday when I was here, and then you have to eat at some point. I left for lunch, and then suddenly, I think that was Annie's car in the driveway. So I don't know. Boy, the flowers have seen better days. I'll tell you that. But again, make sure you follow both Facebook and YouTube. And then, oh, good. Okay. Debbie says she's here. All right. And again, I want to thank, oh, good. I want to thank everyone on YouTube sending super chats. Say, I appreciate the coverage. Do that. I'll definitely highlight your comment. It is day 45. It is the Netherlands. Okay. Hi there, Nancy. I'm reading some of the comments now. Now, I think what I'm anxious today to see if the sheriff reacts to what was said on Megyn Kelly's, what the sheriff, what the Megyn Kelly had a source on saying that they have no suspects right now. And I'm curious to see if they're going to let that stand, meaning, or is he going to respond to that at some point? So, I did not. I was too busy chatting with. Too busy chatting. Okay, we'll go from there. I think as what you're looking at, and that is the front door. Obviously, but I have also heard that is like a fortress. So the idea that someone would be able to, go through that and penetrate that has never really made sense to me, that someone would be able to do that. I believe, and I even did some videos on it, that I believe that they got into the left side. Now, again, remember, the police could have the answers to this, and they're just not, sharing it with everybody. It's a close up of the front door. All right, I want to thank. Let's see. Here we go from YouTube. Oh, good. I did see that. Okay. Hula Zoo, let's do this, please. I did. There was another super chat as well. No, I've walked down. We're going to stay right where we are because we have a good connection. This is right in front of the home. We could see if there's any activity or visitors here today. And I mean, and just so everyone's clear, I mean, at some point, I really would like to talk to Annie and Tommaso. I am going to approach them. I certainly would like to talk to them. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I'm going to certainly try to make an effort to talk to them. If they arrived here, I would try to talk to them. But I also, it's not lost on me that, they have NBC at their disposal if they wanted to. Yeah, I was speaking with someone last night, and oh, good, here we go. Thank you to Angela Tank. Thank you, Angela. Good. There we go. There go the super chats on YouTube. Let me read what she put. Thought this was an important meeting. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I did hear about that. Damon mentioned that. I really don't like city council meetings, but I did hear that they were having some kind of a meeting about the sheriff. Thank you to Mary Dean. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I did hear about that. Um, I'm not big on city council meetings, and then I don't know how long that would take, and I don't really know any of those people. So there are 857 Tucson. He's very knowledgeable and knows a lot of the council people and some of the political back and forth. I don't know that stuff. I'm not. It's not that I'm not interested. No, I'm not that interested in it. And so there is some kind of a meeting. I'll just say this. I find it very difficult to believe that in the midst of this investigation that they're going to make any change with the sheriff. So we'll see. I could be wrong, but I just would be really shocked if in the middle of everything going on, and people can take shots at him and so forth, but I just have a tough time believing that for whatever. And I recognize that good. And again, folks, remember on Facebook, you can send stars. On YouTube, just make sure you follow the page. And we also have our super chats. And yes, as we continue, we're going to do more. Like I said, I've been doing obviously a lot on Facebook. I've been doing a lot on TikTok, but we obviously have a good following on YouTube. And we're going to continue. Now, for those that are wondering, I use an app that allows us to, right now, we're live on X and we're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. So just so you understand, and I am in the process of exploring. Dad's going live. Jacob was mentioning he uses Restream. I am aware and I'm exploring. There are other streaming where you can coordinate like that. But for now, this is StreamYard. It works great when I'm on a laptop and I can just stream it that way. It is challenging, as you know, being out here in the Catalina foothills. But this case, there's still so much attention on this case. So many of you and us, we're very vested in it. And there still continues to be new information coming out on the case. So yeah, she was terrific. We'll have her back. So I'd like the idea of having different guests again, just as a programming note. So it is day 45, the top of this hour. We're going to just have a quick conversation with oh, hold on, someone's trying to reach me, with Vic Meller. Oh, good. Pete says we're good to go. We'll talk to him about his campaign right now. And then we have another guest coming up, and we'll see. It's very possible. I think we're going to stay on a little bit longer today. So, and then later in the week, we'll see how it goes as far as the weather, because it's going to be, they're saying that, oh, good, there's another one. Who do I see? Thank you, Luann. I feel there's animosity past at present between the sheriff and the Guthrie family. I think you're right. That's an excellent point, Luann. And then that puts, excellent point, that puts them in a very difficult situation, because then you have a situation where you have the FBI on one side, and then you have, the sheriff on the other side. So that becomes really difficult. And they're in a really, Leanne, she brings up a really interesting dynamic of this is they didn't get to pick the sheriff. Thank you, Luann. They don't get to pick the sheriff. I mean, it's suddenly that's who's running the case. Now, I do want to clarify. I've heard great things about the investigators on this case. I've heard great things about the investigators on this case. So, in many ways, he's maybe the top, but he definitely, the sheriff, he definitely runs his own. He's the captain of the ship and runs his own show and makes sure that everyone knows that. And I think it does create a problem. And it goes back to the very beginning. I notice, like, when something comes out in the media, how did it get there? Who told them that? Who picked up the phone and said, I got a story for you? So now, Friday was a good example. There's no way that ABC, Aaron Katurska, they didn't go with the story. Law enforcement sources connected to the investigation say the FBI was able to recover additional footage. Now, where do you think that's coming from? That's not coming from the sheriff. Who would know that the FBI recovered additional images? The FBI would. So they didn't come out, and ABC's not going to say, hey, it's the FBI telling us. But that, to me, that's exactly who it was and how that came out. So, folks, we're going to talk to Vic Miller in just a moment. Stand by, Vic. And I just think like that's an important part of knowing of where the media, where the sources, where everything is coming with that. So now people also are, I was watching television this morning. I mean, these TSA lines and what is taking so long, and holy cow, it just, at what point does things should not be that complicated with people trying to travel. So I think also people are just so frustrated with the way that everything is going right now, and they just don't feel that anything is working, like that there's no one working on their behalf. There's no one working in their favor. So, all right, now we are going to talk to him right now. Folks, I'm hoping there's going to be hope on the horizon. And he is, let me just adjust this. So then I'm right there. And I know he's got a busy week. And there we go. And folks, joining us right now, I am hoping he is going to be able to represent us in Washington. And he is candidate. Thank you. There he is, Vic Miller. Vic, I want to follow up again. I've heard just positive things of the energy that you were generating on the ground. That rally you put on was a turning point, pivotal point, and people now are really paying attention, engaged, and realizing that government just isn't working for them.
Oh, absolutely not. And so I'm working on more rallies because I want to keep this momentum going, right? And these Rhode Island first rallies are definitely, they're kicking some butt, and we just want. So this is what I'm doing. So this will be. I'm working with Roger Stone right now to bring him up here on April 25th. Him and Seth Keshel. Okay, so it's not totally announced yet, but we're working on it. And then obviously we talked about last week where we're having the World Alliance Health Conference at the end of May. So these are all goes. I'm in DC right now working on, because Missing Magazine, it doesn't really do anything for Rhode Island as it is. So I'm down here. I'm meeting with the NRCC. I'm working with Commerce. I'm meeting with my buddy Congressman Stubbe in the House Ways and Means. There's so many different things going on that really I'm down here doing more work than he is. So it's kind of a great feeling that I get to bring all this back home to Rhode Island.
What I don't understand is, we're seeing increased threats around the country, and why Seth Magaziner, Congressman Magaziner, why he thinks this would be the time to not fund Homeland Security. That's it, Vic. I got to tell you, it's very puzzling at a time that we need everybody working effectively right now. Why does he want to defund Homeland Security?
Well, that's what the Democrats are doing right now. It's no different than with ICE, right? Where ICE brings safety to the neighborhoods, this brings safety to the country, and they're just against it. They're just against it. It's all about politics there. Anything to make the president look bad.
Now you're down in DC, but anyone, so many people traveling right now. There's a problem with the TSA, and again, I come back to why is Congressman Seth Magaziner? Why doesn't he want to see the TSA agents that staff our airports? Why? How come he's comfortable with them not getting paychecks?
Well, because they think there's political leverage there. Again, they're just so out of touch with everyday American. I don't even really have to say anything about him. I just let him do what he's doing, and he's just self-destructing. The whole Democrat Party is self-destructing right now. The midterms are going to work out tremendously for America.
I like you call him missing Magaziner. Boy, he caught a lot of heat with that family. He missed an important vote in Washington. Those were Rhode Islanders that traveled down there. Vic, not to put you on the spot, but when you have an important piece of legislation like that, would you promise that you would be in DC for a vote like that?
100%, absolutely, absolutely. He misses 8% of his vote, 8%. So for whatever
Wow.
those reasons are, we'll see.
Yes. Now, as far as what type of feedback are you getting? You seem to be getting more people that are paying attention to the campaign and people realizing that they certainly would like to get some representation of Washington. Are you getting good feedback around the
Oh,
district?
oh, absolutely. To be honest with you, John, I had to slow down my outreach
Hmm.
because structurally we're so far ahead of. Well, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. We the enthusiasm is just blowing up. That structurally I can't keep it in line. So we actually had to slow down a little bit so I can work on the structure. And it's a great feeling. I love what's going on. And Rhode Islanders see it. They see it. They want it. And they know that I'm the guy that's going to say what they're thinking, and they're ready for it.
I think people are ready for change. I think people are recognizing who they have right now. I'm going to call it. I mean, it's not working. And not only that, as so much of sometimes he's not even really putting in the effort. Anytime anyone seemingly sees him, he's always attacking law enforcement. He's always attacking the administration. Um, he's not making life better for people. He doesn't have any answers. I get the sense that you want to try to implement things that are going to improve the life of everybody.
Oh, absolutely. And it starts with safety. I'm going to go right back to ICE. I'm going to go with everything else. So, the scuttlebutt is that he's probably going to drop out here anyway. And you can tell just by what you said, the enthusiasm isn't there. He just doesn't
Yep.
want to do this anymore. He's just sick and tired of being attacked. He's stuck in a wedge here. He's part of the deep Democrat Party, and which doesn't align with what Americans want. So I honestly feel he's going to drop out, and we're getting ready for that also in the campaign.
Vic, how can people learn more about your campaign?
VicMeller.com. Just go to VicMeller.com, follow, and just jump on board with what we're doing. I mean, it's so exciting, and I'm honored to be, just part of it. I'm just part of it at this time. The whole Rhode Island first, man. Rhode Island first. That's what we got to do, and we're going to bring everybody with us. Thanks, John.
Folks, he's in DC getting it done. Vic, excellent job. Good work. Good luck on the campaign trail. We will talk to you again. Again, folks, it is Vic Miller. I want to go back to, again, we have some people that are stopping by. One thing about law enforcement, and you just heard him mention that, I can't think that this is a good time with some of the crime that we have in the country, with some of the people that want to go in the other direction from law enforcement. So I want to reset for a moment. Again, it's day 45, and we are right in front of the home of Nancy Guthrie. The search continues for Nancy Guthrie. There are developments with the story. I think it's and there's still I think, yesterday CNN is starting to come back. Yesterday, the Daily Mail was here. For those of you that were watching, I was interviewed on CNN on TikTok Live. I know that News Nation, Fox, like Brian Enton, they would all like to come back. And as I mentioned, I think the more that this is talked about, the more that a focal point stays on this case, the better chance that it has to get solved. Now, for those that are tuning in, and right now we're live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM, you can always listen online at the website, which is depetro.com. On the website has links to all of our social media. So if you're listening right now or watching, again, we're live on X, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook. You can go to the website. It has links also to Instagram and also to our TikTok page. So there are some people that have stopped by, and it's pretty it's a pretty steady presence of people that stop by to look at the flowers. There was a neighbor, thank goodness, that stopped by and cleaned up. Apparently, the neighbors want to clean up, but I'm mostly, and I believe you're interested in what are some of the latest on the case. And I want to go to Michael Ruse. We do have a guest coming up at the bottom half of the hour. But he says, why is January 11th considered a key date in the Nancy Guthrie case when it was 3 weeks before his suspected abduction? Two law enforcement sources say that's the date the image on the right was taken, showing the masked suspect without his backpack or gun. Now, I'm going to show that. Authorities have at different times asked for neighbors to check their home security system for the entire month of January, the night of January 11th, and the hours surrounding Guthrie's disappearance between January 31st and February 1st. The masked suspect remains unidentified. There's a combined reward of more than 1.2 million for information that leads to Nancy's recovery. So I want to show this, and it's not going to be different. But what stands out to me about this is Michael Ruse of Fox, they just left last Thursday. He was on the ground here. Two law enforcement sources say that's the date the image on the right was taken. So for those that are watching, I'm going to show it to you right now. I'm going to show you, and it may be inverted. So let me just, and it is. So I'll show it like that. So that image, what does that tell us? So the sheriff says there's no timestamp. Sheriff Dano says there's no timestamp. But two law enforcement sources, I'm going to read that as FBI, say the image on the right was taken. That's when it was taken, January 11th. And then we have the image that we do know about. So now, Sue, this is the difference. The sheriff, I believe, has said there's no timestamp. There's no timestamp. It sounds like to me the FBI is insisting, or at least telling Michael at Fox, that they believe January 11th, this figure was outside the house. And we all know about that image. But what does that do for the story if, what does that do for the story that why was he out here January 11th but then she wasn't abducted until several weeks later? I mean, that would give us the impression that it was someone in the area continually casing this house and staking out this house. So now, in Brian Enton of News Nation, his interview with the neighbor, they now want February 24th, the week before she went missing. So, you know what also stands out, everybody? And again, this portion of our program brought to you by Propane Plus. You can depend on Propane Plus serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. All of your propane needs online at propaneplus.com. But what stands out to me is, I mean, now they're saying February 24th. I don't understand why they didn't ask for everything like right up front. And now they're looking at the 24th. Like what exactly was going on that this individual was seemingly like lurking around the house for weeks? I think it's interesting to me. I'm going to show the images again. So it sounds like there's, to me, and I'd be curious your thought. You can put it in the comments. The FBI, law enforcement, they seem to disagree on when these images were taken. Because, and by the way, right away when these images were posted, it was social media where one person said, well, wait a minute, where's the backpack? It is odd that the person wears seemingly like the same getup, the same clothes. But I think the first time I saw it was on X, where someone said, number one, they pointed out that the lighting is different. And believe me, when it's a full moon around here, it is like a spotlight. So, but that law enforcement can't get on the same page of when, what's the date of those images? And that is odd. Very, very strange, as a matter of fact. So now, let me check Brian Enton. And let's see. Oh, apparently, all right. Let me find Brian. Brian, by the way, again, he, as many of you know, he does a really, really good job. And on top of that, even though he's not here, he has very solid law enforcement sources. So, and we usually chat with them a little bit. New date the FBI is looking for. Okay. The FBI are asking about January 24th, the Saturday before. Agents are looking at video for both dates. I mean, that's really like, I don't want to say the big news of the day, but what does that tell you if, in fact, that individual, and again, we are live on Facebook. Thank you for all the stars on Facebook. Facebook, you could share that you were watching. We're also live on our YouTube channel. You can send super chats. Make sure you follow the page. It is day 45. I do want to just mention that that my plan, I don't have any plans to leave anytime soon, because I think they are getting closer. And I think especially, I believe that the FBI footage, the sheriff and his department may be able to stand up at the press conference and announce that they have an arrest. But I think that the FBI footage that they've been able to pull and continue to pull and gather, I think that could bring them closer to an arrest. Now, for those that are just tuning in, you can see that is the front door of the home of Nancy Guthrie. And there are still some people that are popping by and like to leave flowers or just kind of check it out. The area where the flowers are, it does look a little bit of a mess, but it's because of the little rodents that go into, good morning, go into where the fresh flowers are. That's why, again, if you live in the area planning on visiting, the smart move seems to be there's beautiful artificial flowers, and then you don't have to have them watered, and then they just preserve well, and then you don't have the different animals coming in. And I think there's enough signs for now. I do want to recap, and again, we do have a guest joining us at the bottom half of the hour, and he is an investigator, and I was Douglas McGregor is going to be joining me. And what stood out to me with his take on the case, I find really interesting. And he talks about, I want to just, talks about the map, very similar to the exit road I identified in my map below. So how the person got in and out is really interesting. But Douglas McGregor, he posted in a recent NBC interview, Sheriff Nanos suggests the offender could absolutely strike again. And he writes, that's a far leap from stopping short of reassuring the public there's no cause for concern. And I think in the beginning, they did kind of say there's no cause for concern. He writes, to me, this suggests law enforcement theory and evidence is leaning towards a repeat pattern-based offender. The sheriff's warning may be based on an existing series of similar potentially linked crimes, or it may simply suggest law enforcement theory involves a motive and suspect profile that implies a high probability of prior or repeat offending. Based on his comments and the known facts, burglary, theft, sexual assault, homicide combination are maybe the most likely motives. Serial abductions, kidnappings, like Ariel Castro, are much rarer than serial murderer. Think of that. Serial kidnappings are much rarer than even a serial killer, as a matter of fact. He also writes, at face value, the warning appears to reveal the direction of the investigation, narrow the list of possible motives, and indirectly suggests certain people, motives, and theories are lower on the list of investigative priorities. Lastly, it seems that law enforcement is trying to determine whether it's a targeted crime. This part I think is interesting, and I'll ask him about this. Keep in mind, a crime can be semi-targeted. For example, an offender could target elderly people, women, affluent neighborhoods, or vacant houses, while maintaining flexibility as the exact target itself. Hopefully, the sheriff's office has implemented some measure to accompany the sheriff's comments, such as increased patrols, remain vigilant. So I come back to, the sheriff's comments on the Today Show. I know some people did not fully understand the nature of it, but I thought it was very significant. That was the first time that he has come out and said that they actually believe they know the motive. And especially we'll ask Douglas about that. The whole element of the he, we think we know what his motive was, and we think we know why he did what he did. So again, investigator Douglas McGregor, I'm very curious to hear his thoughts. We are going to continue our coverage here. We're going to have more guests during the course of this week. Today is day 45, the search for Nancy Guthrie. We're also going to have on Jennifer Coffindaffer, who is retired FBI, and then very excited that we're going to also get a chance to speak with Morgan Wright, who's with the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, and he is really, really good. And so very much looking forward to talking to both of them. Now, remember, if you want to email me, the best thing to do is go to the website, dpetro.com, and then there is a link that you can contact me. That's really easy. Or at the top of my X profile, I have an email address. On the top of my Facebook profile, we have an email address. I'm very confident on YouTube. There's also an email address if you'd like to get in touch with me. And we will have some, continue to have some different people on. And if you see someone who is very knowledgeable, that, and you can always hint to them or say to me, boy, I think you should, get this person on, because to me, I think right now the Nancy Guthrie case, I think it breaks down to two different camps. The general public, that maybe they followed it initially and it moved on. And then there's us And there's all of you, and there's me that are saying I can't get enough about Nancy. I think it goes into the two camps. And I also want to remind people, because believe me, I have, there's some people that love the coverage, other people like enough of it. I like to remind people that if you want to follow some of the coverage on what's going on in Iran, good news is not a problem. I'm not doing the coverage on what's going on in Iran. This is for, we're going to really dig deep. This is for the, what I call the 1%. This is for the people, you are into the case, you know it's day 45, you know the various players. I am here on the ground. This could be a challenging week with the heat. Heat advisory starts on Thursday, could be challenging. We're going to figure out a way to make it work. So, but my plan is, number one, continue the coverage. Number two, I am actually staying here. And number three, we're going to start to sprinkle in more guests like that, like true crime believer. And I'm very interested to talk to Doug McGregor. So, and at the same token, I realize that there are people. We are, as I said, live on the radio. I want to thank all of our great sponsors that we have. We're live during this hour, and we have, and I mean phenomenal, fantastic sponsors like Capital Fence. I tell people, you're in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, you want to call owner Mike Rizzo. Folks, with everything going on right now, especially in the Northeast, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, that are sanctuary states, you need to protect yourself, you need to protect your family, and Capital Fence. Remember, even if you just get a gate to the driveway, And as we stand here outside of Nancy's home, I do see more people in this area. They don't have a fence up per se, but they have a full gate. So no vehicle could get up and go through the circular driveway. Call him 401 618 4407. Always online at capitalfenceri.com. Well, folks, let's bring him on. I saw his postings on the platform of X. I thought they were excellent. Thought they were very, very insightful. And we want to welcome to the John DePietro show. And it's Douglas McGregor. Douglas, first of all, thank you for taking the time. And I'd like to give you a minute just to set up. If you could introduce yourself to everyone. You certainly are very knowledgeable and have experience in this type of area.
Sure, John. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So just for everybody who's not aware of what geographic profiling is, I basically look at the spatial, temporal, environmental, and geographic elements of both human behavior and space. So for human behavior, it might be, an offender, victimology, persons of interest. And then for space, in a case such as the Nancy Guthrie case, it might be her property and then the wider community. And then geographic profiling is just one activity that I do. Some others being like operational mapping and search prioritization and spatial investigations.
I was very intrigued by your comments after the Sheriff Nanos on Friday, the segment that showed of him on the Today Show. And I'd like to go into that a little bit. Just what did you take away from that?
Yeah, of course. I thought it was interesting that he said, he told the community to be vigilant, be aware that this individual, he absolutely may strike again. What that tells me is that they have a working theory. The last thing you want to do is scare the general public, scare the community, have them on high alert. And if you know who you're dealing with and you know they're not a repeat offender, you're not going to do that. So I guess what his comments told me was that their working theory is that this is, or it's very likely that this person is a repeat pattern-based offender. Now, what that means is a repeat offender is either, somebody that they have in mind that that they're looking at that is committing a series of crimes and they're repeating, burglary or assaults, home invasions. And then the pattern-based part is they're following a similar pattern. It may be a similar crime type in a similar area, a similar MO. So that's kind of what he's suggesting, is that's who this person is, or who this person, based on the evidence they have at hand, could be. And that's what the suspect profile is kind of pointing at, that they have the suspect, the profile of somebody who may repeat this kind of behavior.
What do you think it tells us that he made a point? He didn't say it, but then the reporter from NBC, Liz out of NBC Los Angeles, she said when she was doing a wrap on the package that the sheriff believes that this is pretty much the theory. The motive is the theory they had from day one. Now we didn't see him say that, but with the media, that to me is he meant to mention it. He wanted it included. What does that say to you, that he wanted it known, that they believe he's known the motive since day one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what it says to me is, I mean, they're probably, they're keeping a lot of information, I assume, close to heart. It tells me that
Sure.
their working theory, or one of their stronger working theories from day one, is that this is a type of crime that could be a repeat pattern-based type offender. And, for me, that's kind of based on the public details I know, and I know the same as everybody else in this chat, is that for me, it's kind of pointing more towards either burglary, sexual assault, homicide, or a combination of the three. Those are, based on what we know, are the kind of the repeat type of offenses that this could be. The last one being, abduction, kidnapping, but serial abduction, kidnapping is extremely rare. It's more rare than serial homicide. So that may be the abduction part of this may be kind of a secondary thought, in terms of what they're thinking of a repeat offender.
And I found that, and again, folks, we're speaking with Douglas McGregor. I found that part really interesting. I like how you also broke out when they use the term targeted, it doesn't necessarily mean someone may know someone's, name or birthday, but it's the type of individual or situation that they're looking to strike into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And, if this, I see a lot of chatter in the media and online about targeted, and that's exactly it. If this was targeted and it was specifically about Nancy, they're either targeting Nancy, her property and possessions, or her family. And if it was specifically targeted Nancy, it could be any number of motives. However, it could be, as I mentioned, semi-targeted, which means the offenders targeting a certain type of victim or demographics, such as elderly people, women, kind of remote houses that are vacant. So they have some flexibility in the target selection, but they have
Right.
it is targeted in a sense that they have a target in mind. Yes.
And let's talk about the fact that what do you make of the discrepancy where the FBI and the sheriff seemingly are not on the same page? The FBI don't go on the record. When I see comments, I was just mentioning Michael from Fox, Friday, Aaron Katersky, ABC, they say law enforcement sources, familiar with the investigation. I read that as FBI on background, but the sheriff, the FBI seems to believe that the images are not the same night that this individual could have been in front of this home, either Saturday night before, or they're going back to January 11th. But the sheriff continues to, I think his office, they continue to say they're not convinced about the timestamp. But what does that tell us about this suspect with the mask, if he had actually been here on prior occasions?
Uh, I guess it's just me speculating, because I agree with you. There's been no confirmation on that timestamp.
No.
Obviously, in one video he's got a backpack, the other video he doesn't.
Right.
But it could have been the same night. It could have been all in the same event while he was there. He could
Yeah.
have come back. He could have come back later without the backpack. We have no idea. Or it could be a completely different night. If it was a different night, to me, it's possible that that indicates a lack of sophistication. It is true that sophisticated criminals will case a place, right? They'll scope it out, surveillance. They'll see the people coming and going, the activity, and know when it's vacant and know when it's not. They'll know the places, the weak points of entry. Absolutely. But is he going to really put himself on camera knowing there's a camera there and then come back several days later on the same camera, not knowing who's watching that footage or whether it's being recorded or uploaded to law enforcement? I doubt it. It's possible. But if it is different nights, it kind of, to me, suggests a lack of sophistication in his surveillance methods. So it really is tough to say at this point which one it is.
Has your thoughts, Douglas, on the case, have they evolved from the beginning? When I work with police a lot, they say a lot of times investigations, it can start in one direction and then things take them into a different direction. Have your thoughts and theories on the case, has it evolved in any way?
I would say for me, once the video footage came out, it evolved from the fact that I guess it evolved past the point of being a missing person investigation, right? Somebody just walking away from the property, maybe an elderly person walking away from the property, going missing. So it evolved past that once the footage came out. And for me, it's likely that the person in the video removed her from the property. So I guess it's evolved to that point. But in terms of having a theory, I keep saying, for me to have a theory, I need some combination of motive, suspect, and primary target. And right now, publicly, we don't have any of those because the motive is evidence, right? And we don't really, it doesn't sound like they have a definite motive right now. At least they haven't shared publicly. So publicly, we don't know of a motive. Suspect, we don't have a suspect. And primary target, we don't know the primary target. As I mentioned, it could be Nancy or her property. It could be Nancy's family. It could be her possessions in her property. It's just tough to say at this point. And even once you identify the primary target, it could be any number of scenarios, right? Like if it's a family member, there's any number of scenarios, whether it's it could be revenge, it could be lust, it could be financial. There's too many unknown variables for me to have a theory at this point, other than I think it's either targeted or a semi-targeted event.
The fact that, Douglas, that the sheriff said and made a point to NBC that he said two things, actually. He said, they have their theories, we have our theories at one point. I'm assuming he means the FBI. But the fact that he said the motive is basically the same motive that we had thought of the first day of the investigation, is it possible then that would eliminate some kind of complicated motive? Meaning, like, let's just say we found out that this was some bizarre, there are people that think somehow it's tied to Epstein, or that it's like the cartels involved, or I just wonder if they came to a working motive on day one. It was actually a member of law enforcement said that tells him that would be because of what they took away from the scene on day one. You wouldn't necessarily come away with a complicated theory of what happened if you walked in on day one and saw what they deem a crime scene.
Right. Yeah, I would say, based on what they've announced publicly, to me, it seems like they have a working theory, and it's not an isolated event. It's somebody who is or could be a repeat offender. Now, if we're looking at elderly abuse and motive, so the three likely groups of people that are likely to commit elder abuse, we'll start there, are either family, caretakers, or people in a position of trust, right?
Yep.
So as law enforcement, an elderly person, you have to look at all three of those scenarios. after that, elderly abuse is very common. Elderly abduction is actually not as uncommon as some people think. Just a quick
Mm.
Google search, there's quite a few cases that pop up since 2018. Some are still in the courts in the US. There's cases of financial abduction. They kidnap somebody, an elderly victim, and they take them to an ATM to withdraw money. There's a case in the courts right now of 3 teenagers who abducted a woman and sexually assaulted her. There's even well-being abductions where one family member abducts to remove from the toxic environment of the rest of the family. So
Wow.
what I'm getting at here is just there's just a whole range of scenarios that for motives for an abduction scenario. So when people are saying, why remove her from the home, it could be for any number of reasons, or it could simply because the intention wasn't to remove her, but it was evidence, right? And they wanted to clean up the crime scene, and so they removed her alive or not alive. So
Okay.
yeah, it's really tough to say why they removed her from the home if it wasn't specifically for if the primary motive wasn't specifically abduction.
I think that's really interesting, and I like how you had pointed out earlier that abduction is actually far more rare than a serial killer. And would you agree, Douglas, that what really just makes this case so different is this? I mean, there's break-ins all the time. We've heard about high-profile NFL players while they're at a game, and then organized theft rings are breaking into their home. But what somehow just put this into orbit was, for whatever reason, was the motive a break-in and then turned into an abduction, or was the abduction the motive all along?
It's difficult. If I'm left
Yeah,
with only those 2 scenarios, I would say the former is more probable, just because there hasn't been a reliable there hasn't been any evidence that suggests that she was abducted for some financial gain. I mean, there was
right.
the couple letters or call-ins to TMZ and whoever else about a ransom, but the ransom didn't match the net worth of the family, right? Like 1 Bitcoin, what's that, $70,000? I have no idea.
Right.
It doesn't match the net worth of Savannah, so it just doesn't line up behaviorally. The If it could very well be, a home robbery that went sideways.
Mm,
It's possible, and you know, robberies in the evening at night are rare. They're less common. Robberies tend to happen during the day. Um, but if somebody, just for the fact that people are at work, they're away from home. Um,
sure.
if they do happen at night, it's either because the offender doesn't care that someone's home, which is very high risk. They know the person is vulnerable, so they've cased the place. They know who the target is. The person who lives there is the primary target, and they need them for some reason, or they've surveilled and they think that she's, or he, in this case Nancy, is going to be away from home, and so they've entered the
Yeah,
home. It could be any of the above, right? And her, although nighttime robberies are rare, her neighborhood, the Catalina foothills, and I've never been there, this is just me doing my research online a little bit, is a little more susceptible to nighttime robberies. It's dark because they
yep,
don't want the light
yes,
pollution. Their
right.
houses are set back from the road. There's lots of foliage for surveillance, to concealment from surveillance, and if they did any research, then they know they have a vulnerable victim that they can control, right? So it's
A neighbor, it's interesting. I spoke to both the neighbor and a realtor, and then the neighbor was saying it's far more, many of the people that live in these homes, this is peak season for them. This is when they come, and then so many of the people clear out in the summertime just because the temperature becomes like 110, 112. So they go to various different, they have another home to go to. So a neighbor was saying that this is far more common in the summertime, is when a lot of the break-ins. And so it kind of struck everyone that this happened, when it did, which is like peak season. And it was a realtor that said this is a very elderly population. When I'm Douglas, when I'm on the ground here, I mean, I'm telling you, during the day, it can be like a ghost town. I mean, I may see some people walking around, but I never see. And I was mentioning this, like I'm in from the Northeast, and so if I go for a walk around my neighborhood, there's people there's a kid shooting baskets, or there's someone working on their lawn, the garden. You don't have anybody working on their lawn or garden around here. So during the day, it's pretty quiet. I can't even imagine once nighttime hits, and I'm telling you, you cannot. I did a Court TV live hit. It's 5:30 in the morning. You cannot see 10 feet in front of you. It is so dark. So I could see why, just to circle back to your point, but why, if I was in fact in the business of breaking into homes, this, I mean, a light, as you know, fences and lights are big deterrents, and this area doesn't have a lot of fences, and it doesn't certainly have a lot of lights.
Yeah, exactly. And lights and just surveillance, human surveillance from your neighbors, people on the
Yep.
street is the biggest one. Um, and and exactly, and that's it. And I live up here in Canada, and we have communities like that where you know the majority of the community becomes snowbirds in the winter, and they go down to Florida or Texas. So
Yes.
those areas, it sounds like this is kind of like that. Those areas become more susceptible to daytime, nighttime, all kinds of break-ins and robberies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if that's again, that's one theory, that it was a robbery, and I mean, publicly, at least for me, it has to remain on the table until evidence shows otherwise.
Now, I have one more question for you, but
Sure.
first, how can people follow your great work? That I'm so glad I saw your posting on X, because I thought it was very insightful.
Yeah, of course. All my handles on all social media are at the Geo Profiler. I use X and YouTube the most, but I have the other ones as well. I just don't use them as frequently.
Okay.
And then I also work for a company called Iris, Incident Response and Investigative Strategies, out of Idaho. And our website is called irisinvestigativestrategies.com. And so I work with a group out of there, and you can find us on there as well.
Just my final question for you,
Sure.
because I work a lot with police, and also, because of that, sometimes some of the people that provide me information they're former criminals, people that were involved with crime, and now they're older, they were younger, and they kind of straighten their life out. But something that they can't get past is, and you touched on it, and I don't think people fully appreciate the high risk of this, because I've been telling people, what type, this isn't the norm. I mean, if you're going to go into a home, what if she's awake? What if she calls 911? What if she's on the phone with a friend and says, I think I hear someone? I've ridden with police, Douglas, and many times, the dispatcher gets a call of a panicked homeowner. I'm upstairs in my house. I think I can hear there's someone downstairs, and it's terrifying. But you touched on it, the high risk nature of someone going in to a home with the homeowner there. That is not the people that break in. That's not what they're looking for. Like every Monday, when I hear from business owners that say, yeah, someone tried to break into my business over the weekend. And then, tonight when people come home from dinner, they'll find out, oh, wow, someone either broke into their home or apartment, or they tried to. But you said the words, the high risk nature of going in with a homeowner there. It's most people, you don't take the chance.
Exactly. And there's a big risk reward trade off there. But a nighttime break-in is very high risk. You don't know who's in there.
Mm,
And even if you think you know who's in there, you don't know who's staying over there for the night. If they have
right.
if they have a firearm, again, they could call law enforcement. It is there's just such a risk of confrontation, right? And a lot of burglaries. I mean, most burglaries, they don't want violence, they don't want confrontation. They
No.
just want to go to the master bedroom, take the jewelry, and get out. Anything they can grab and put in the bag.
Yep.
But and this kind of goes back to, if this individual cased Nancy's house on prior occasions, and those on that video, if it was on different dates, it also tells me that the reward was greater than the risk. It means that this individual couldn't substitute her house for another place. It means something about this property they wanted to go into for whatever reason. But yeah, it's very risky. to do any time kind of nighttime break-in.
Yeah, and just before I let you go, as I pan, people can see. So the left of her home, which I think the vulnerable part is, if you go into the left, there's a little courtyard. There's sliding glass doors into the master bedroom. I believe sliding glass doors into the living room. But that's basically an empty lot there. If you look up the street, there's no one directly across from her. Across the street, the house is actually situated on another street, so that's an empty lot. You have a hill that goes up to a house up there, and then directly across is another empty basic lot. And then the house next door, with the garages, they actually do have a number of cameras, but the left side of the house, I would think would be very vulnerable. Douglas, excellent to talk to you. You are very, very knowledgeable. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I would hope you'd consider coming back sometime.
My pleasure, John. Thank you for having me, and I'd love to come back. So anytime, just give me a shout.
Sounds great. Douglas McGregor. Thank you, Douglas. Excellent job. And folks, right here on the John DePietro Show. Now, again, in case you haven't guessed, it is day 45. We continue our live coverage. We are live on Facebook, where you can share that you're watching. We're live on YouTube, that more people are following the channel. And then we are also right now live on our radio partner. And this portion of our program, I mentioned, I can't stress enough, Capitol Fence. At least get the fence and gate, free estimate, Capitol Fence. They're licensed and insured, 401 618 4407. I also want to remind you of ServPro of Providence in the Northeast of New England. They're getting a lot of flooding. Call ServPro of Providence today, 401 941 5500. If you have a fire, flood, any type of mold or water damage, ServPro of Providence, 401 941 5500. So it is day 45. And as you can tell, I really I mean, Douglas has just such great insight. I also want to thank, thank you to Nina, Super Chat on YouTube. And yes, thank you, Nina. Again, on YouTube, you can send super chats. Obviously, we have the stars on Facebook. Make sure you follow the page. I want to keep up on the latest here in that. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. Hold on. I think the fact that they're going back, like you just learn more, folks. I find that each guest, especially when you get a guest like Douglas, that you just pick up more and more. And I know some people have some, and right now, by the way, it's still on the table. I mean, they don't, they don't know what happened. So no one can say for sure, that this is ruled out or that is ruled out. But the fact is, I know some people want something more dramatic. And I'll also mention that locally, with some of the neighbors that I talk to, that they still think, thank you, Donna Farrell. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. More support on YouTube. I come back to, you can't ignore the sheriff and the investigators. They seem to think that they have a theory and they know the motive. And the sheriff told NBC that it's basically the same motive that they've thought from day one. I also, and again, I appreciate that. Thank you, Donna. I know that some people don't like the sheriff. It's his investigation. I think it is also significant that he did make a comment about the FBI akin to, they have their theories. He didn't say the FBI, but he kind of said they have their theories, we have our theories. I come back to, I wonder, is it possible that they all right, several things. The number one, the sheriff, maybe they thought that they were going to be able to solve this very quickly, and they wouldn't be able, they didn't need to share the information that they had with the feds. We did hear that. You got to remember where it's maybe coming from, because the sheriff is not going to put out that he's keeping information from the feds. But I feel pretty confident in saying that the FBI was making it known that they were not being giving all the information pertaining to the case. So now I also want to remind another great sponsor that we have, Watson Materials. The most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island is Watson Materials. Give them a call today, 401-885-0600, Watson Materials. You want your outside, especially after the rough winter, you want it to look and be able to enjoy it, call Sean at Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. So far, as we continue our coverage, I have not seen anyone that has come out to the home so far today. They could have been here earlier. I did see a car. There was a car here yesterday, but so far quiet. There's definitely more of a concentration of neighbors trying to clean up the flower beds of everyone leaving flowers. And I know in the neighborhood association, of which I'm on the verge of becoming a member, but no, they are encouraging anyone that comes and leave flowers to please just leave. And there are beautiful artificial flowers right on North Campbell. There's some beautiful shops that have artificial flowers. I know that maybe some people feel they want to put the real thing. Again, we are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Thank you to Deb Longo. Pacemaker spiked at 2. Do you think it's possible? Heart attack. Events changed after that. She was active in local politics, found fraud, and became a target. Boy, that is interesting, Deb. I don't know. I think the pacemaker needs to be fleshed out. I'm going to try to get a doctor on because, and that's an excellent point. And thank you for that super chat. That's very interesting. Spiked at 2, possible heart attack. Events changed after that. I've heard the pacemaker initially seemingly was playing a big role here because initially, they had that almost as the time that she was like removed from the home, and then we found that that's not the case. That's number one, and then number two, I saw a doctor that was explaining. This is another neighbor going to clean up some of the dead flowers because they're having a problem with rodents. But the interview that I saw, oh, good. Thank you on that. And there's Debbie. I did not see the first one. Okay, thank you, Deb Longo. And thank you to Norman. The interview that I saw it was a doctor saying that your pacemaker connects to the app on your phone, but the phone needs to be close to the pacemaker. So if the phone is not near the pacemaker, then it disconnects, but it doesn't disconnect until the time that it's supposed to be connecting. So what that means is a lot of people set their pacemaker to connect apparently with their app between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. I saw an interview where the doctor said that doesn't mean as though she was removed from her phone at the time. That just means that when the pacemaker went to connect with the phone, she was not there. So that's what I had heard. I'm very open to that. And I may investigate and think about having a doctor on, or if you know of someone, have them reach out to me because the pacemaker, remember, they had the the helicopter, and they were riding with what they call a sniffer, and they were doing that very low to the ground in an attempt to see if they could detect the heartbeat of a pacemaker, and I don't believe they were able to detect that. So again, it is day 45 and coverage continues. So I hope you enjoyed our great guests this morning. My plan is we're going to continue to listen. This case, there's still a lot of information coming out on the case. You can see, I think it's very positive that that is a neighbor that is starting to clean up a lot of the dead flowers. I know they're having a problem with, like I said, some of the rodents that were coming out around here and kind of getting into the flowers a little bit. So my plan for now would be we're going to stream at different times. Definitely, I think this works in the morning as opposed to later into the day, and especially with the heat of the day. So, but what you need to know, I think it's a lot of the information that is coming out from people continuing their coverage on the case. And whether it's true crime, Belieber, or whether it's Nancy Grace, or whether it is Megyn Kelly, I think it's all positive. I think the more that we shine a light on the case, it's better. So, so listen, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Now, listen, I am planning on, we may be back later. I'm definitely going to be live for a little while on TikTok this afternoon. We will post some updates. We may actually, let me, but I'm not going to sign off just yet because we have a good group that's in. Remember, you can share that you are watching. I hate to cut off a stream. I know people enjoy chatting with each other. You want to be, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you. I appreciate that. Another super chat from Eric. Boy, that's one way to get me to stay. Uh, it is it's not easy, but I still think that there's a lot to go with this case. And just so you understand, it would be very painful for me personally if I left and then something big hit with the case. Very, very difficult. So, and I don't want to see that happen. But my plan is to kind of, I think we'll go heavy here in the morning and then periodically at different times. Now, to be very clear, something significant happens, then we will definitely be back. But I know people like to see the chat and like to see the stream. And I think it's just good for people like yourself that are into the story, to be able to come together and discuss the story and different thoughts that people have. Again, this whole thing is still wide open. It is still, and people need to know that this is an unsolved case. I think it's like many of you, it's so odd that the individual, whoever did this, that they decided to remove her. It's just so cruel. Um, and I don't understand. I think that remains like the big mystery of why someone would do that. So, all right, listen, it's day 45, maybe back with an update later, definitely later, live on TikTok. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our guests for tuning in. The search goes on.